Now for our roundtable with Mary Anna Mancuso, a Republican political strategist, and News Channel 5 political analyst Brian Crowley. Thank you both as always for being here. Last week, the State of the State address Governor Ron DeSantis listing several of his key efforts in the upcoming year, among them talking about his successes, unemployment rate, big low, historic low, state's public university system ranked #1 in the nation, placing emphasis on education by elevating and celebrating educators. How do you rate his address overall and his focus on education and teachers? Then we'll talk specifics. I would include environment there too. What grade do you give him, Mariana?
I would say it's a B+. He has it was a very lofty address. He has a lot of things that he wants to go from abortion to education to environment. And I think that he's definitely shooting for the moon, and hopefully he'll land among the stars with this one.
We talked about abortion as a key issue last week. We will talk a bit more today about education and environment. And let's begin with Brian, teachers. He's talked about a minimum salary for public school teachers, $47,500, bringing Florida from the bottom half of the states in the union, he argues, to #2 in the nation eventually. But some of the veteran teachers are saying that's for starting out. What about veteran teachers farther down the line? We saw a big protest in Tallahassee the day before the State of the State address. Your sense of this teacher pay issue and where it goes and the implications therein?
We never resolved the teacher pay issue. You know, when they were allowed to, they legally can't now, but you know, the first big teacher strike was in 1968 with our first modern Republican governor, Claude Kirk. You know, the teachers got slaughtered in that strike, and so they don't have as much, they never recovered completely from that strike. You know, the issue of teacher pay and education reform is every year, and they never really quite cross the finish line on that. Yeah, teachers are poorly paid. They need to take care of teachers that are you know, that mid-level teacher who's been in the system 10 years, 15 years. You can't just take care of the guy that's starting out. And we talk a lot about it. We never completely resolve it because the commitment's not there.
How potent an issue in the state races that will, you know, shape the view out of Tallahassee in a Republican-led legislature for many years?
It has a lot of potential for impact, because not only is it not addressing, as Brian pointed out, the veteran teachers, but it's not actually addressing the support staff, your speech pathologists, your counselors, those people that are not necessarily teachers but are working hand in hand with educators to help students for a brighter future.
And by the way, it's his proposal on this minimum for starting teachers. We'll have to see where the Republican-led legislature picks that up. I want to talk about water issues again. He talked about $625 million for Everglades funding, wants that to repeat over a 3-year cycle. You heard the Congresswoman talk about federal money there. I think early on, very frankly, it's fair to say people thought, well, is this a one-off with him? He knows there's a constituency for environment, so it's a one-off early in his administration. But the one-offs become a consistent year-long approach and focus on water issues in Florida. Your take on that, Brian, where we are, where we're going, and if sitting here a year ago candidly to today, are you surprised by the ongoing consistent approach on environment when many said they didn't necessarily see that?
Yeah, no, I am surprised. I think part of it may be because he has a good relationship with Brian Mast. Yeah. But whatever the reasons, he received all this information about the concerns. You know, he's immediately, from the day he took office, he wanted to invest a lot of money in taking care of the Everglades, and you know, he completely appointed new people to the South Florida Water Management District. You know, there's been challenges to, you know, from Brian Mast, largely a close associate of the governor's, about sugar lobbyists being appointed to the oversight board of the Army Corps of Engineers. That's a big issue. So there's you know, Republican leaders out there who are showing you know, a great deal of promise towards the environment. That said, there are still some environmentalists who feel like there are other issues that are being ignored and the governor has gone far enough. But no, he's been a big surprise.
But compared to the Scott administration before him.
Oh, Scott didn't care about the environment, and he still doesn't.
His polling ratings right now would be the envy of most governors in the United States. So he's in a groove right now. Talk about that.
He has a great ability to actually bridge the gap between both Republicans and Democrats, and I think that's something that is really refreshing for us to see in Florida, because we've seen in the past under Governor Scott's administration, it was very difficult. He was often at odds with the Democrats, and they weren't being able to find solutions. And we have Governor DeSantis reaching across the island saying, hey guys, let's work together and find solutions, not only for Florida, but to benefit Floridians. And I think that's fantastic.
We have to talk about the national issue that becomes the every voter issue, the impeachment of President Trump, impeached in the House. Now the Senate trial, history in the making yet again, as the Senate will take this up in the trial beginning Tuesday. Again, we've talked about it a lot, but as we're there now, talk about its impact as we are now into 2020 and how it rolls out and plays out, Brian.
Well, I mean, as of today, I would say the impact on the 2020 election is still minimal.
A wash?
I don't think anybody's really budging. I think a lot of people are not paying that much attention to the impeachment. I think that it's sort of a there they go again for both sides. I do think there was a bit of a faux pas on the part of the Democrats when Nancy Pelosi was handing out pens as she was signing it. It's supposed to be a solemn event. It's not a football game. And a lot of the people I talk to, they just kind of shrug about the impeachment on both sides.
Does that say something about our civic mindedness on all sides of the aisle? I'm not taking sides with that question, but what does it say about our civic engagement, wherever your view might be, that a lot of people are kind of, I'm bored, I'm kind of whatever? Or does it say anything? Are we being a little too portentous here and trying to read the tea leaves, Mary Anna?
No, I think that it does speak a lot. People are tired, right? There's a malaise among the electorate, and I hope that that doesn't translate into low voter turnout in November. And the reality is that when we look at previous presidents that have been impeached, none of them, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were never removed from office. They were able to maintain their presidency and see out their term. And so, you know what, if the Senate gets it done, which is very difficult, they will need 67 senators to remove Trump from office.
It's not going to happen. There's not the math there.
You know what? I'm telling you, I'm not seeing it.
Brian, final thought.
I would also say to some of my media friends out there that be careful how you play Lev Parnas. You know, Avenatti with the Stormy Daniels was a big deal.
The indicted fundraiser.
And now Avenatti's indicted. You know,
Parnas now saying the president knew what was going on.
You know, Cohen, his attorney. Everybody thought, oh, when Cohen on his way to jail will be revealing all kinds of stuff. You know, I would just say, be careful.
As always, sage advice from both of you, and we'll have your final comments in just a moment.